Welcome to this episode of Chakmah, Choter. Chakmah in Hebrew means wise. It means that the individual that is ascribed this designation has a reasonably fast processor. They're able to observe the information, particularly in Yahweh's Torah and prophets, and to process it systematically such that they can deduce intelligent decisions. Chakmah is interesting, and that's one of the reasons we call this series Chakmah Choter, is because Chakmah was the first thing that both Dod, as the king of Israel, and Yeshaya, Isaiah, as the great prophet of Israel, attributed to the Choter. There are two exposés on the Choter in Yahweh's Torah, prophets, and Psalms. The first was written right around 3,000 years ago by Dod, and he wrote the 14th mashal, which is a proverb specifically about the Choter. The entire word picture or proverb, mashal, is devoted in its entirety from beginning to end about this unique individual who will be ascribed many attributes by God. And in particular, he is going to be Chakmah, intelligent. And he's going to use his intelligence to reacquaint Yehudim and Yisrael with Yahowah, and also with the Messiah himself. When we turn to Yeshaya 300 years later, he devotes the whole 11th chapter to the Choter, and specifically tells us that the Choter is going to be unique in all of human history, and that he's going to have the seven spirits of Yahowah, including the very spirit of Yahowah. And the second spirit, after declaring that the Choter is going to be imbued with the spirit of Yahowah, we're told that he has the Ruach of Chakmah. And the Ruach of Chakmah means that God is supplying this man's intelligence, his wisdom, his ability to be discriminating and discerning, his the attributes that he is going to bring to his testimony so as to be the first to understand, perceive, and present many thousands of profoundly important insights. And the result of that, according to Yahweh's inspiration through Yeshaya, Isaiah, is that there would be a nesh, a sign, that Yahweh is going to lift up for his people before he returns. And everything we read about that nesh, sign, that banner, tells us that you are looking at them over my shoulder, that they are part of the Yada Yahowah series of books. And we know this because Yahowah goes out of his way to say this explicitly. He tells us that the nesh is Yada Yahowah. And Yada Yahowah simply means to know, to recognize, to acknowledge Yahowah. And that is how all of these books were titled going back, now 24 years ago. Now, it is a little bit funny, and we have to keep a sense of humor about all of this because, well, the job that has been given to the Choter was deemed impossible by Moshe. So if we are to trust the Torah, then Moshe said that the job I have been given is impossible, that no person can do this job. If we are to trust and rely upon Yahweh's statements, he agrees. He says, the children of Israel are way too disagreeable and ornery and embittered and antagonistic, such that The job of leading them to the truth and having them accept it is way beyond what even God himself could achieve. So we have Moshe, the great Torah giver, the great liberator, one of the greatest men who ever lived, saying, not only can't I do the job, no one can do this job. And then you have Yahowah saying, yeah, I agree with you. They're pretty much impossible. I'm out of here too. I want nothing to do with them. We'll go through the motions. We'll get them into the promised land. I'll communicate over time through some 20 men that will listen to me. But apart from that, I'm not returning to them until they return to me. And so, wouldn't you know it, God decides, I don't need this aggravation. I have no interest in talking to them again until they have decided they're going to return to me. And he picked a man that he refers to as the Choter to accomplish that. Now, there's not enough wisdom in the world that to accomplish that mission, since Yahowah himself gave up on Israel, and so did Moshe. But nonetheless, this Choter has 7 spirits of Yahowah to get this accomplished. It's not just the spirit of wisdom and intelligence, but also the very spirit of Yahowah, the Ruach of Yahowah. The Ruach of Bien, which I think is the single most important of all Hebrew words when it comes to understanding who God is and what he wants. It is the thing that more than anything else I have brought to the occasion through these books. You have to begin with the second to last spirit that Yahowah says has been bequeathed to the Choter, and that is of diat, of knowledge. You have to know what God said. And so I started out writing these 35 books that you see behind me, all of which are free in their entirety at yadayah.com, all of which are the essence of the YAHOWAH blog. But I started out doing something no one had ever done before. I created a new format for an amplified translation. And this translation is even necessary for Hebrew speakers because it goes back to the words that God shared prior to the implementation of diacritical markings by the Masoretes. Goes all the way back to the Dead Sea Scrolls as the text being translated, and then derives the meaning of each word based upon what those letters meant when brought together in their raw Paleo-Hebrew form 3,000 years ago. And I have been exceedingly systematic and diligent in presenting Yah's testimony consistent with the original meaning of each word, recognizing that in many cases you can deduce the meaning of a word by its verbal root, its actionable root. And this is particularly true in Hebrew. And that you can look at related words to ascertain the meaning of those words. And you can look at the original alphabet that was used, which was a drawn in really human form, showing a ram's head, showing a home with a single entrance inside, showing the teeth to talk about that which is nurturing you could bite into and then would articulate and say, showing a foot as in moving in the right direction, showing a person in a reclined position but with their hands before them so that you know that they're reading something, showing a human head, their eyes, the ears, the mind, so that this person is being observant, showing people that are standing up, looking up and reaching up to God, showing God's hand reaching down and out to us to lift us up, showing the human eye to tell us we ought to be perceptive. And these were the letters that these words were comprised of. And all of those drawings have specific meaning to us. And we can deduce the meaning of the words based upon the graphic depictions that were used to define them. But I didn't just do that. I then took an amplified translation of the meaning of the words that God conveyed, recognizing that it was always appropriate to convey every meaning that was appropriate in that context, rather than depriving the God of what he was trying to say by us deciding, no, he was trying to say that, but not this. So I provided an amplified, really the first ever amplified translation in this regard. And then I put the most generic form of the Hebrew word in a parenthetical and made it in italics, so that you can, if you're reading this online, which the books are free online, you can copy and paste that into any search engine and look it up in a lexicon designed to tell you the meaning of that word as it was used 3,000 years ago. And then beyond that, I would expand the translation within the parenthetical. And then I would provide you with the Hebrew stem and the conjugations, as well as the moods, so that you get a fuller picture of what God was trying to say. Very few people know that Hebrew is a language where there is no past, present, or future tense. All things are forever true. All that Hebrew attempts to do is to limit or release a verb in time, with the perfect conjugation, limiting the period of time. It can be in the past, the present, or the future, but it's a limited period of time. And the imperfect expanding that so that it would continue in time, the action of the verb. The stems can do any number of things. They can convey just simple, unnuanced reality. They can say that the object is a secondary subject and is carrying out the action as would be the subject, which means if it's God's talking about a person, it's saying that person is acting like I would have them act. It can have moods that say that, stems that say that the subject is carrying out the action of the verb and actually receiving the influence of the verb at the same time. It can say that the person being described here through the action of the verb is unaffected by anyone else. This is solely on their own initiative. It can say that this person was forced and compelled to do what the action of the verb describes, which would be the opposite of that, wouldn't it? And then you have, in addition to the conjugations and the stems, you have moods. Hebrew is the only language where volition, free will, is so important. It can actually be expressed in first, second, and third person, in the cohortative, first person, in the imperative, second person, or in the jussive, third person. That's really an exceptional way to be able to communicate. So everything is true for all time. The action of the verb is nuanced in terms of the relationship that is established between the subject and object of that action. And the time can either be expansive or constrained. And I shared all of that with you. And if there was a word that is used infrequently and someone is questioning what its meaning might be, I'll go back to the original use of that word in the Torah and derive a further connotation from there. And if you run some that are just really expansive, like Zeroah, we'll do a whole study on it, and we'll go to every place that word is used, and therefore have an expansive and accurate definition, particularly of a word that is so important in communicating God's message. So this is something that was very unique in terms of developing bien, understanding. Because it's one thing to approach it intelligently, which I think this is an exceedingly intelligent way to go about reintroducing God's people to what Yahweh said. And so it is definitely Chakmah. It is definitely BN, because we're making connections to understand and deduce insights that have never been seen before. It's definitely Diat, based upon this huge now basis of knowledge. But it's also Itzah, which means that God gave through his spirit, this Choter, the ability to do something that had heretofore never been done before, not even by Moshe, not by Dod, not by even the great prophet Yahowah, by no one. And that is to see the entire picture from beginning to end. From creation and the life and times in Gan Eden, all the way through our expulsion, and then the means that we would be given to re-enter Gan Eden, the fulfillment of that process, and then ultimately what leads to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, being reestablished, and our allowance to return to it. No one had ever seen the whole picture before, and it could demarcate every important date along the way, and then could explain how each of the cast of characters that Yahweh depicts are ascribed certain roles that are so essential during that entire process. And I'm the first, of course, to recognize that David is not only the Messiah and the Son of God and the returning King, he's the one who told us that he would be crucified in 33 CE during Chag to fulfill Passover, exactly when it occurred, exactly how he said it would occur, which means that David is the Messiah, the Son of God, who is our Savior, and there was never a Jesus. That's a powerful deduction, and it's irrefutable from God's point of view. He gave us so much evidence to this, it's a shame that I was the first to deduce it. It should have been obvious to everyone going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. But that is a unique gift that the Spirit has provided by this analysis of God's testimony. The Choter, though, would have to have something else if he's going to prevail because, well, Moshe said the job's impossible. No man can do it. Yahweh agreed with him. So Yahweh, in addition to giving this man the spirit of Yahweh and the spirit of intelligence and the spirit of understanding and the spirit of knowledge and the spirit of the respect for Yahweh and his name, and the spirit of being able to be the first to perceive the entire portrait that God was painting and then convey it intelligently and appropriately to God's people. He gave the Choter the spirit of Gabor. Gabor is a unique and powerful Hebrew word. It's one of the most misunderstood Hebrew words as well. The Gabor is the essence of Isaiah 9, which speaks of Dod. Names Dod, speaks of Dod. Dod was Gabor. The most Gabor of all humans is Dod. That's why when Daniel tells us that a man came to him to reveal the truth about when the Messiah would return and fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and give us this grand swath of future history. He described that man as Gabor El, the most courageous and capable man of God. Gabor is a man. It's from Gabar. It means human male who has strength, who has conviction, who has courage, will fight for what's right. Dod is the ultimate Gabor. He is the Gabor El, Gabriel. But he's not the only one that God gave a sense of courage. Not the only one that God made capable. Not the only one that Yahweh imbued with great conviction and confidence. Not the only one that God made him able to fight the good fight because the battle would be tough, beyond what any man could achieve. And yet this man would achieve it. Why? Because he has the 7 spirits of Yahweh. Why? Because he was willing to listen to Yahweh. Why? Because he devoted his life to this mission and has been relentless in the pursuit of reintroducing Yisrael and Yehudim to Yahweh and reacquainting God's people with their Messiah and the Son of God, our Savior, King David. So that's the reason why Dode devoted a mashal, a proverb, the 14th, to the Choter. He even devoted the 8th to Chakmah, so that when he introduces the Choter as Chakmah, you would know what Chakmah means, and the power of Chakmah, of wisdom, of intelligence, of having a disciplined and fast processor that is capable of exercising good judgment, of using evidence and reason to deduce extraordinarily important insights. And in these books that are behind me, free on the shelves at YAHOWAH.com, there are many thousands of insights that were previously unheralded. So that is who the Choter is. And we're told in Yeshayah that he would write the Nesh that Yahweh would lift up. We're told in Zechariah exactly how Yahweh would bring this banner up, how large the banner would be, how it would be like a moving picture. It's the Yahweh blog. It is Yada Yahowah. And we're told explicitly that the Nesh is Yada Yahowah. God telling us that thousands of years ago. Now, I would just like to leave you with one other thought here before we return to Chakmah Choter, is that now that you know what Chakmah means, Choter has a number of meanings. My favorite, because I think it's funny in today's vernacular, but a Choter is a sucker. Now, a sucker is actually a good thing when you consider what the sucker is doing. In this case, the sucker is giving new life and producing fruit on the fallen root stump that is Yisrael. It gives the roots and the stump of Yisrael not only new life, but productivity, fruit. That's a sucker. I like that because sucker is a pejorative today, and Chakmah means smart. So he's a smart sucker. And I think that's hilarious, personally. God has a sense of humor. And if you're going to be associated with him and work in his company, you need to have a sense of humor. It's the whole reason that Yahweh chose Elia of all people to bring back. Now, 2 reasons that he's bringing Elia back as the other of the 2 witnesses. And one of those 2 reasons is that Elia was a smart sucker. He was a bit of a smart ass. You want to know the truth. And God loved it. God's totally entertained by the sarcasm of Elia. And of course, the other reason is that the obstacle in getting Yisrael, then, now, and tomorrow, to embrace Yahweh by name and accept their Messiah, the Son of God, and returning King, their Savior, Dode, is religion and politics. Those are the things, those are the obstacles that stand in the way. And so what did Elia do? He was the one who was the most successful at exposing and condemning the religion and politics of Israel. And not just the religion and politics of Israel, because it was Baal, the Lord, and Asherah, the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of God. He destroyed Roman Catholicism and Christianity at the same time, not just Judaism. So this is God's cast of characters. And, you may not like them because, well, Moshe was a broken down old shepherd, and he was a stutterer. And then he crashed and burned. He literally gave up on Israel. Said, I can't do this anymore. And Elia, the guy that he's bringing back, well, truth is, he was a smart aleck. He's funny as all get out. He had sarcasm, which today is banned humor. And he was anti-religious and anti-political. Yeah, he'd be like me. He'd be getting you're a bad boy all the time on X. Every month I get spanked by X for correctly ascribing the truth to Islam or Christianity or whatever it may be. In fact, I was even spanked on X for saying that that X programmers and computers were irrational. So you can't even criticize the computers that run X without being spanked. Oh yeah, I wouldn't have lasted a day. Somehow managed to persevere. So these are God's casted characters. Then you go one step further and you look at who's the guy that Yahowah said, this is the one I love. This is my guy. I choose him because he's got all of the attributes and attitude and courage and character that and intellect I love. That was David. Picked him at 8 years old, which means that they knew each other much before Dode was 8. Anointed him as the Messiah, said the Spirit's never going to leave him. And then come to find out, Dode had the wherewithal to discover it's right for me to volunteer to be the Passover lamb. It is correct for me to be the soul that carries the guilt of the covenant family deposited in Sheol on Matzah, never to be seen again. It's right for me to be the firstborn of firstborn children. I volunteer for this. Send me in, coach. And he convinced Yahowah that it was the right call. Yahowah, of course, agreed with him. And that is profound, is how he came to realize that this role was cast for him. And yet he saw what no one other than myself saw. Yeah. 3,000 years later, I know exactly how he figured it out. And I've walked our listeners through how he figured out that it should be him that volunteers for this mission. And he not only volunteered for it, he fulfilled it. And not only did he volunteer for it and did he fulfill it, but he told us all about it. He's the only eyewitness account of what actually happened in 33 CE on Passover as the Passover lamb was crucified by the Romans, is written by Dode David in first person in the 22nd and in the 88th Mizmor. And the only acclaim, godly testimony that says, yep, that's my guy. Yep, he did that, is in the 88th Mizmor, which Yahowah wrote specifically for Dode. And the only timing that we're given is exactly when this was going to occur, 700 years in advance, to the exact day that he would arrive, is provided by the Gabriel, Dode himself, to Daniel. God told us all about it. The first 30 Psalms, that's what they're all about. They're all devoted to revealing this truth. That's why I wrote Coming Home, Volumes 1, Volumes 2, Volume 3. And then God provides the seal of the great song of Dode. This I'm signing my name to this. I'm affirming that everything about this is true. It is the declaration that Dode is the beginning and the end of all things relative to the covenant, relative to living with God, relative to our eternity and how we get there. That Dode is God's beloved son. That Dode is the Messiah. That Dode is the Passover lamb. That Dode is the king who is returning with Yahowah. As brilliant as the sun. It's all there. It was all there for 3,000 years. It's all been there. And so that's the reason why the Choter is Chakmah. Because someone needed to discover what was hidden in plain sight and then share it with you. And that's why we're here. So this next line is pertinent to that. We're in Yirmiyah. And in Yirmiyah, Yahowah is speaking. And he says, through whom can I choose to speak? Who will respond? Debar. Shall I consistently communicate? Who will listen? Peel, imperfect, first person, singular, cohortative. And who can I choose to testify as a witness to sustain and to warn? Wa'ud shall I use to responsibly admonish and assist, who will continually speak like me? Hiphil, imperfect, cohortative, first person, singular, such that they will listen, that they will hear without relenting, call imperfect. Behold, speaking of his people, they have uncircumcised and stubborn, unresponsive ears, and they are incapable of listening, comprehending, or enduring. So look now and notice that the word of Yahweh now exists. It is this time called perfect. It's become an insult to be scorned, to be disrespected by them. They do not want it. They do not possess it. They do not delight in it, nor do they favor or prioritize it. Jeremiah 6:10. I have been saying until I blew in the face that all of the religious rhetoric by the Haredim that they are Torah observant is pure crap. They're Talmud observant. They dress the Torah up like it's a whore and dance around it. They plastered over it with the Talmud, and the Talmud is not the word of God. It doesn't even contain the name of God. And when these bozos read their Torah recital, they got no idea what it says, what it means, how to apply it to their lives. And they won't even say Yahweh's name. I understand more about the Torah than every rabbi who has ever lived. And that might sound braggadocious, but there isn't a squat amount of intelligence that has been applied to the Torah by rabbis ever. They're wrong about everything. And just begin with Maimonides. He's 250 years off on the Jewish calendar, and yet Jews believe him. He came up his calendar with the sanctification of the moon. Why? Because the moon's really important in Islam, and he was a Muslim. And because of the number 19. Because the number 19 is the secret number in Islam. Not based on the Torah. I've provided a timeline too. I've told you exactly what happened when. The day that we were escorted out of the Gan Eden, 3968 BCE. The very time that Abraham and Yishak climbed up Mount Moriah to perform the dress rehearsal for Pesach, such that the narrative would confirm the way back into the garden. 1968 BCE on Passover in that year. I've told you the exact day that the cornerstone was laid for the house of Yahweh's name, called the temple, and shared the commemorative speech of that cornerstone being laid, which is the 89th Mizmor, doing show after show on it and writing extensively about the 89th Mizmor, the most important piece of literature ever narrated, ever shared. God was the songwriter. 968 BCE, year 3000 Yah. And I've shared with you the commencement speech that was given 7 years later when the house for Yahweh's name was completed by Solomon on the Temple Mount before all Yisrael, when he told all who would listen that in their future they would be hearing the voice coming out of the heavens of the Nakri, the observant foreigner, and that they needed to listen and do everything he asks of them. And surprisingly, there's not a single rabbi that was smart enough to figure out, hey, we ought to be looking for that Nachri fella. God says that we need to do exactly what he asks, and that he was be the Zeroah, the final Zeroah, the one cultivating the harvest. I've also shared that it would be in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, giving the exact date that Chakmah would be celebrated, and even denoting the fact that Passover is not a 7-day holiday. Chakmah is a 7-day celebration. Passover is simply the first of those 7 days. And that matzah is a vastly more important celebration than is Passover. And that Passover by itself is counterproductive. Passover is not the door to freedom, the door to life. Freedom from our guilt comes on matzah. If you were to become eternal, but still slathered in your religious and political guilt, the only place for your soul would be Sheol. You don't want to do it as the rabbis are telling you to do it. Anyway, it's Dode, 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, that fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. And that means that it will be 2033, 40 Yobel from that moment, 2,000 years, that the final 3 Moed Mikri are going to be fulfilled. Teruah, not Rosh Hashanah. We're not celebrating the Babylonian New Year. It's the day of the Herald, Teruah. And it's going to be the greatest show on earth. That evening and the following morning are going to be unlike anything the world has ever witnessed. And Eliah is going to be the master of ceremonies for this event. And it's going to be the sacrifice of the red heifer. And it is going to be glorious because God is going to release the waters that cleanse the adulterous woman. And he's going to ignite the fires that reach up into the heavens. It just is going to be beyond anything the world has ever seen. And then God's going to return with Dode. 6:22 p.m. as the sun sets in Jerusalem, October 2nd, 2033, or 6,000 Yah. 5 days later, with the entire earth restored to the conditions of Gan Eden, we're going to have the opportunity to camp out with God again. That is the whole picture. That is the timing of this picture. And I want to share it with you under Yahweh's name, as Yada Yahowah, as the Yahowah blog, because the rabbis scorn and disrespect Yahweh's name and his testimony, replacing it with theirs. But I won't let them get away with it, nor should you. It is the word of Yahweh that I care about, and I disrespect the word of all rabbis, as does God. All you should care about, if you are a Yehud Jew, is what is the origin of Jew? Yehud. What does Yehud mean? Do you even know? Do you even know how that name, Yehud, was comprised? I do. The first Yah is from Yahowah. The Ud is from Dode. It's Yahweh and Dode, Yahweh's beloved. God named you after the ultimate Yehud, Dode. So Yahweh is saying, through whom can I choose to speak that's going to respond? And for the time that this was provided in the 7th century BCE until Teruah in 2001, where Yahweh reached out to me and said, I want you to do this for me. I said, okay, well, obviously I'm not having a conversation with myself, and the very fact that you're speaking to me about this and asking me to do this, I'm going to assume that you are who I think you are. What does he want me to do? I said, you're going to begin by defending my people. I want you to expose and condemn Islam. You want me to do what? You know that not a single person has ever done that and lived through it? Let me see. I'm fully aware of that. I want you to expose and condemn Islam because Islam is trying to kill my people. Don't get all uppity with me. That's only the first of many things we're going to do together. Well, can I, like, are you negotiable? Sure, kid. What do you want? I gave him the 3 things I wanted. Said, fine, now reach into your pocket. You'll find my signed agreement in your pocket. I did. It was there. We've done this ever since. 10, 12, 14 hours a day for 24 years. We're going to see it through. Today, that book that he asked me to write is called Goddamn Religion. It's 4,200 pages long. It's the most comprehensive, contextual, well-documented presentation of the Quran and of the Hadith, Muhammad and Allah, and the first Muslims ever written. If Israel had used it rather than bullets and bombs to hold the Muslims who perpetrated October 7th accountable, the world would not have turned on you. You would have had complete and total success. That's why God wanted it written. I remember that morning on October 7th that I was watching the horror of Muslims shouting Allahu Akbar while flooding into Israel, realizing that the overwhelming preponderance were just ordinary Muslims. They weren't Hamas at all. And I realized that at that moment, I'm the only person on the planet who knows exactly what's happening, that we're seeing a reenactment of what Muhammad did at Kabar. And I realized there's not another person on the planet that understands that. And I also understood why the IDF couldn't respond, why they were paralyzed, and why they won't be able to deflect the next Alaska's flood. I even understood what Alaska means, why it's there, why that dome of the hoofy print is there, what those things actually represent, why they should be torn down. And yet Prophet of Doom was writing it, was a trip through hell. Muhammad's the most repulsive person who ever lived. Allah is Satan. It's disgusting. It was I'm working with YAHOWAH, so he made it as entertaining and productive as it could be. And he arranged for me to do 5,000 talk radio interviews on it, which is where many people came to know who I am and what I'm doing for you. Pretty amazing. And he has had his Malak deployed so that even after thousands of death threats and many, many thousands of death threats, and even a fatwa being placed on me by Saudi Arabia, here I am. Right out in the open. I haven't tell people where I live. It's in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm totally and completely safe. Why? Because I have YAHOWAH's protection. He asked me to do this for you. But come October 7th, I had already written Prophet of Doom. It's the only book that I had written that I had not gone back to edit, to improve. One of the things that I'm very devoted to doing for you, because I'm really a good listener when it comes to God. When I learn something more from him than I knew the day before, and it provides a little different shading on a subject, I want to go back in and correct everything from the beginning. When you have 20,000 pages that you've written, that's considerable effort. And the one place I didn't want to go back, though, was Prophet of Doom. It's a nasty experience. And so I asked YAHOWAH, I said, I'd like to press on. I'd like to finish Coming Home 3 and then write Coming Home 4, which is celebrating Dode's Mizmor, his Psalms, Dode's life, whom I'd come to so love and appreciate. And so I said, could I take a pass on this? Can we just use Prophet of Doom as it currently exists? God says, no. I've taken care of you. Now you take care of my people. 6 months later, the one volume of Prophet of Doom is now the 5 820-page apiece volumes of Goddamn Religions, the most comprehensive, compelling, irrefutable exposure and criticism, denunciation of the Quran, Allah, Muhammad, the Hadith, Islam, Sunnah, the first Muslims, what happened at Yathrib, what happened at Kabar, what happened at Hudaybiyah, what happened at the Pledge of Aqaba, ever written. By the way, and God didn't just pick on Islam, because Islam is not God's most hated religion. Judaism is that. And so we wrote 3 books to renounce Judaism, of the Babel series. And God calls the author of the Christian religion, Paul, the plague of death. He devoted the life of an entire prophet just to denouncing Paul 666 years before he'd write his first letter, Chabauk. And based upon God's rebuke, I would write 5 volumes completely trashing the Christian New Testament. I mean, literally left nothing but shreds, proving every aspect of it from beginning to end is a farce. Disproving it, not to save Christians from it, but so that the religious rubbish of Christianity that robbed Dowd of his titles, of his achievements, robbed Israel of the promises God made to them, robbed humanity of the chance of salvation. I have moved all of that religious rubbish aside and disproved everything, every nuance of the Christian New Testament, so that the truth was no longer hidden under the pile of rubbish, and that the world was finally in a position to listen to the realization that Dowd, he is the Messiah, he is the Son of God, he is the Savior. He is the one who came in 33 CE, that was crucified by the Romans. He is the one who is returning as king, and it is obvious, and God says it emphatically. There never was a Jesus. Paul made up the myth in 52 CE. These are the things that God gave me the ability to articulate to you. And because they run so counter to the religious and political platitudes of the lost and deceived, God gave me the Gabora, the courage, the capability of delivering this information to you boldly and bluntly. So the answer is, through whom can I choose to speak and respond? You got him. I'm the one. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. I didn't win this job. There wasn't a race out there. There wasn't a contest out there. There wasn't submit your resume and see how you do. I was out minding my own business. I had walked away from religion and politics, and I want to tell you, I was very deeply involved in both. And I'd walked away from them because logic dictated it, because I'd done my homework and I had realized that there wasn't anybody worthy in politics, and there wasn't any worthy claim in religion. And God tapped me on the shoulder and said, I want you to do this for me. And he didn't pick me because, well, I was qualified. Quite the contrary. He didn't pick me because I was the most articulate person on the planet. Not the case. He didn't pick me because I'm, 6'5" and buff and a star athlete, or that I can sing and dance and that I'm known and popular. Nope. He didn't pick me because everything I had done in my life had turned up roses and that I had never failed or never struggled in my life. No, quite the contrary. He didn't pick me because I was perfect. He picked me because there was no one else to pick. See, there's no reason for me to brag. I was asked to do this by God, and I accepted it because there was no one else to pick. Not a single Jew was willing to do the job, nor was there any other goy on the planet. Now, I can't tell you that I was as difficult as was Moshe in accepting the job. Moshe had history with Jews that was very negative. He had tried to save them, and they turned on him. And so when God came to him and said, I want you to do this with me, Moshe said, hell no, I'm not doing that. Nope. Go away. Not going to happen. And God said, well, you're the only guy. There was no other choice because Moshe had keen knowledge of the politics and the religion and the militarism and the caste economic system of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. He knew it and he hated it and he walked away from it. So Moshe had walked away from religion and politics, and therefore he was qualified because he understood these beasts. I had done the same. But you see, in my case, I only had a positive impressions of Jews and Israelis. I had been a businessman, and every time there was an opportunity to do business with a Jewish man or woman, I was all over it, all the time, because every business deal I ever did, and there were millions of them, with Jews was enjoyable, honorable, productive. I love Jews. And then I had the opportunity to go to Israel, and I got to meet and spend quality time with Israelis. And man, I love Israelis. They're tough. They've got conviction. They've got character. They got backbone. Love Israelis. So I was exactly the opposite of Moshe. I said, yeah, absolutely. I love these people. Of course, now, God didn't tell me the whole story. We were going to learn this together. And he told me the whole story. Oh, by the way, I'm going to ask you ultimately to do what Moshe said can't be done by any human. Where I agreed with him. And, good luck with that. No. And by the way, if you fail, I'm going to destroy the planet. So no pressure or anything. And that's what the prophet said. If this job that Yahweh has asked me to do of getting his people to Shub, to return to him, if I fail, God's going to destroy the planet. He is not going to come back. No pressure or anything. No responsibility. Nah. Not with Yahweh. I might take a 1,000-year nap when this is over, but we're going to see it through. And God's very clear we prevail. So eventually, you're going to come around. I had the great honor today of seeing the second very well-known spokesperson for Israel in America and in the world befriend me at on Facebook, where we're nearing the maximum audience size. And I will share both of these names with you at a further date because it is really important that we do what we can to encourage these two television personalities. And they're far more than television personalities. They've been welcome guests in my home and I mean that not only in the sense that we listen to both of them almost every day. It's a man and a woman. These are two people whose character and conviction that I've come to love. And both are now at least listening. And on X, we have the ear of every important voice that stands with Israel. That's a tough audience. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy to get through to any of them, but ultimately we do. And that's what God's going to accomplish, because when he said, who can I choose to have testify as a witness to sustain and warn? He found his guy. Devoted every waking moment to him for the last 24 years. I have 8 to go. We're going to see it through. We will prevail. And Israel, if you want to know how much conviction I have, I've already told you that to save you from Muslims, I have received many, countless thousands of death threats and a fatwa, which is definitely skin in the game, right? I've not only devoted 100,000 hours to learning what I need to know to share these revelations with you. I've not only invested $1 million in the support of this mission on your behalf. And I don't take donations. There's nothing to offset it. The books that are available on Amazon are royalty free, and the books that are available at yadayah.com are entirely free. No, I'm not asking anything from you other than you hoping that you will listen. But Yahweh is intent. He is insistent that we see this through, that we share as a witness what needs to be known to warn you about the path that your politicians and your religious leaders are taking you down that is away from him. And that we sustain you and protect you from what is coming by telling you the truth. Being the boldest person in social media and on the internet as a voice that stands not only staunchly behind Israel and with Israel, but to take the bullets on behalf of Israel. But as I was going to say, it goes even beyond all of that. Because of the many names and titles that Yahweh affords to me, from Yada to the Choter, to his Nakri, to the Bashar, to the final Zeroah. One of them is the Adam of Perah. Many of you might recognize that from Numbers 19, the red heifer. It actually means bloody red man of the earth who is productive and fruitful, but it can be translated red heifer. That's how it's known best. So the red heifer sacrificed. And in this case, I'm going to lay down my life, going to actually be bludgeoned to death by the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan on the Temple Mount on the 24th of September, a Shabat, in 2033 on Towrah, to a full solar eclipse as the remnant of Israel watches the gory scene. Much like Dode was crucified by the beast of Rome 2,000 years prior to that. But it's what God's going to do with that sacrifice this time is going to make such a difference. That's why he's bringing Eliah back to be the master of ceremonies, because what Eliah did 2,888 years prior, the sacrifice of the bull, with Yahweh igniting the flames, surrounded by copious amounts of water. It's exactly what's going to transpire. And based upon Numbers 19 and Numbers 5 with the adulterous woman, that sacrifice is going to prepare the mortal remnant of Israel to witness Yahweh's return with Dode and to enter the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, as all of Israel's foes are wiped out and eliminated at this time. It's the end of the time of Jacob's troubles, which begins with the Shabuah harvest 7 years prior, 1 year from now, 22 May of 2026. So I'm going to lay down my life for you, Israel. That's how devoted I am to this cause, to you. Now, it's actually not as dramatic as it sounds. God's going to make it dramatic. It's going to be the greatest show on earth. But what I'm going to give is my Bashar body. What Dode gave was a Bashar body. They're expendable. God can create a new one at any time. As a matter of fact, even we going forward will be able to create new Bashar bodies. And I'm going to be at that point more than happy to have my Bashar body bludgeoned by Hasatan for the benefit of Israel. So I'm giving something that cannot be kept anyway, because my nephesh soul is going to be removed from it. And the nephesh soul is what matters. And it's your nephesh soul that matters to me. And if I can sacrifice a bashar body for your nephesh soul, that's a good trade. And that's what we're going to do. And so I'm going to be that final witness, sustaining you and warning you, responsibly admonishing you and assisting you, such that they will listen. Most people are unaware, particularly Jews, that while they were chosen as God's people, Jews right from the outset did not choose God in return. Abraham was a scallywag. He pimped Sarah out, and Sarah, it was a delight. He pimped Sarah out twice for sheep. Yishak didn't even know which son to bless. Jacob played a shenanigan. Jacob's life story is really not appealing. He said and did almost everything wrong. Jacob's 12 sons, not good either. They were immediately in trouble. They were immediately doing things they never should have done. They sold one of their brothers into slavery. The children of Israel under slavery in Egypt were not good. When Moshe finally tried to help them, they turned on him. The entire Exodus experience is horrific. Jews were belligerent, antagonistic, revolting, embittered, ungrateful, condescending from day one. And it never changed. And it still hasn't. And so God says, in fact, they got so bad that the Jews during the Exodus told God to go away and to shut up. They never wanted to hear from him again. And that's why God decided, okay, all right, I'll pick men through whom I can speak. I will tell you what you need to know. And we'll finally have our final rendezvous in the very end when you decide to return to me. I will return to you. And it will be a remnant that will return physically, geographically, mentally, emotionally in the heart, cerebrally in the mind. These are the people that we're reaching out to. Those who will finally circumcise their ears, who will finally listen, who will comprehend and endure as a result. Because now the word of Yahweh, it is treasured by me. It's adored by the covenant family. You will see us post it, put it to music, post it with graphics that are beautiful. We will share it in every way that we can because we love Yahweh's name. We love his testimony. And yet the religious scorn him. It's just an absolute disgusting thing for me to see Christians pretending that they speak for God when their Christian New Testament denounces God, demeans him, negates his Torah and prophets, robs him of his son, steals his people and the promises he made to them, dehumanizes and demeans Jews. And you see these jerks pretending that they not only, we love Jews because our Jesus, he was a Jew, Now, the Christian New Testament's an anti-Semitic rant. Condemns Jews for crucifying the mythical Jesus. It's disgusting. Everything about it's identity theft and robbery. And of course, I am the foremost expert on Islam. No one knows the religion better than I do. And every part of Allah and the Quran exist to wipe out humanity. It is genocide against the entire human race, beginning with Jews, that Allah dehumanizes, calls you monkeys and swine. It tells Jews to kill you. Jimmy tells Muslims to kill you as Jews. And they did. They perpetrated genocide against Jews. Killed every man in Arabia, every Jewish man in Arabia, the first Muslims killed. Tens of thousands of them. Raped the Jewish women. Sold the Jewish children into slavery to buy more weapons. It's the birth of Islam. It is an anti-Semitic genocidal rant. Just the truth. It's undeniable. It's what the Quran says. It's what the Hadith says. It's what Muhammad did. It's what Allah celebrates. And sadly, it was rabbis that made it possible, because they sold Talmud readings to Muhammad, which he used to give his Quran a sense of religiosity. Without rabbis selling Talmud stories to Muhammad, you'd never even heard of him. He would have been a low-life thug in Arabia, and no one would have ever known. But it's also true that rabbis created Christianity. The first person to call himself a rabbi, the man who learned everything that he needed to know to create the myth of Jesus, to rob Dode of his title, to counterfeit what occurred, to create a New Testament based upon annulling the Old Testament. The person who had the skills as taught by the rabbis to do that was the Rabbi Paul. Yeah, without rabbis, there is no Christianity. There's no diaspora, because it was Rabbi Akiba who foisted a false Messiah on the world, brought in the wrath of Hadrian, the name that is going to haunt Jews more than any other, Palestine, is all a result of what Rabbi Akiba did with his false Messiah. Because it was Hadrian that came up with the term while he was crucifying Jews as a result. And the result of Rabbi Akiba, the father of modern rabbinical Judaism, is the diaspora leading to the Holocaust. You'd think that you'd be smart enough Jews to say, that's probably not a guy we should be trusting with our souls. You should be smart enough to realize that Judaism has created the enemy that robbed you of your land, that is even robbing you of your land today, that caused the diaspora, that caused the Holocaust. And it's the same rabbis that created Christianity that has haunted you for 1,800 years and dehumanized you. And it's the same rabbis that created the religious veneer for the Quran that has turned 2 billion people into those seeking your annihilation. And it's because the rabbis don't give a crap about Yahweh or his words. They care about their words, their power, their control mechanism. They are disgusting. So here we are, Jeremiah 6:10. Now you know. What are you going to do about it? This has been a new edition of Chakmah Choter from the YAHOWAH blog, and I am your host, Craig Winn.